It's working. Before you go any further, perhaps you had better have some sort of explanation about why there are a Richard Sanders and a Keith Sanders. I did realise that keeping the two somewhat separate might lead to some confusion, and it was Simon Meads, who runs the Boston Grammar School Alumni Facebook pages, who asked me to explain. Before I dive into another story, for those of you watching from countries other than the UK, the Boston we are talking about is the Boston in Lincolnshire, UK, the original Boston. And watch out for a story coming up about my involvement in a link between New York, Lincolnshire, UK and the somewhat larger city in the USA. Now, back to what I'm on about. Richard Sanders and Keith Sanders are the same person, who is Richard Keith Sanders, born in Harrogate, Yorkshire, UK in 1944. The origins of that name are from my father and his best pal back in Harrogate in the 1940s. My father was called Richard George Sanders. His best pal was Gordon Croft, a well-known butcher in the town of Harrogate, with two shops in the town at one time. Gordon was Richard Gordon. Gordon had two sons, Richard Allen Croft and Richard Ian Croft. Both are younger than myself, and they have a sister called Gillian. I was first offspring to appear among the happy mates, and I'm pretty sure they agreed among themselves that any male children would be Richard something or other. And so there we are. Again, we come back to those two happy pals, Richard George Sanders and Richard Gordon Croft. They could not call their children Richard all the time, obviously, hence for my entire life in the UK from 1944 to 2008 I was always known as Keith. Why a change? Well, you see, once I began to live in France permanently, I had to comply to French administration, which takes the first given name of a resident in France and uses that name for all administration purposes and paperwork. So I became Richard Sanders here in France, where I've been permanently since 2008. I pay my taxes in France, although I must add here that they are not very much, far less than they ever were in the UK. You see, ever since their revolution, people here in France count, and the average family here has a far higher level of spendable income. Their state pensions are much higher than those in the UK too, but we'd better not get waylaid by another subject. My French health card is Richard Sanders, although my driving licence is Richard Keith. It just happens that my first Christian name was used everywhere here in France, and so that is how I'm known here, Richard. Additionally, the French folk do have a difficulty in pronouncing TH. As we do in England, it's easier for them to use Richard. There is an exception. The president of Ruth's Handicraft Club, Renee, a lovely lady, calls me Keith, which I do not object to, as it always accompanies a kiss. Well, there we are. That's the end of that short bit. I hope you enjoyed that. Brought to you by Cracker Books, written and read by Keith Sanders. Try to follow us on YouTube and give us a link if you like it, and think about what's the word? Registering to the channel. It all helps. Until the next time, thank you for being with us.